Morning, everybody. The audience, thanks for joining us again for another GenNext 2020 webinar. It's quite interesting how we've been catapulted into this digital world. I've got some amazing guests with us today, and I'll let them introduce themselves. But today is an interesting topic. I remember when lockdown had happened, and I'm not an avid Formula One fan, like I don't watch it every weekend, but what interested me was how quickly they went online with some of their professional drivers and continued, basically for me, it's playing video games, you know, in case I offend any of the guys here. And then we had Adidas develop a shoe that is linked to FIFA. So for me, it's become a very interesting topic that I wanted to always explore. Firstly, before I move any further, I would like to acknowledge my 14-year-old son who helped me do the research, and I'm paying him for it. And I did a crash course into esports, gaming, and gamification. So it's going to be an interesting chat. I'm going to learn with the guys. So guys, welcome to this. I've got Tanya, Tyndall, and Bronson. So to open it up, guys, when I talk esports, this is the stuff I've got in my house. That's all I know. The other day, my 14-year-old said he wanted to get a new one of these, and I don't even know what, it's a controller to me, and it was like 5,000 Rand. And I'm like, why do you want to buy 5,000 Rand when we bought one which was 900 Rand? And I think it's interesting to see how this space has grown. So I'll start with Tanya. Tanya, do you mind introducing yourself?
So my name's Julia Bish, and I am a Twitch streamer, esports personality. So basically, I create content on games, and I'm specifically focused in the esports market. And yeah, I live stream my games, I live stream my content, interact with my community, and have fun doing it.
Great. Sorry, I said you're Tanya. Julia, my bad, my mistake. But I'm interested, Julia, what's that fridge behind you? I see some Red Bull in there. Why is it there?
Yeah, my good friends at Red Bull like to stock me up. So I have a fridge, and often when my friends come over, I have a big desk down the side of this wall, and yeah, we can fit about 4 people down here. So
Sure.
I have a bunch of friends that come over, and we'll just set up our streams, set up our gaming PCs, and then pull a few all-nighters.
Yeah. So brands are getting involved in this space. I can see that, right?
Absolutely.
And some certainly so, and some not so. Our next guest is Tyndall.
Hello, everybody. My name is Tyndall McAlary. I am a Twitch streamer, a YouTuber, a digital artist, and an overall content creator. Yeah, I mainly focus on Twitch streaming and making gaming content for YouTube right now. And yeah, I live stream my games. We like to have a lot of fun. I've got a community, and we're called the Positivity Squad. And you know, just trying to make a movement and trying to change.
So Tyndall, Twitch is the same as TikTok, right? It's the same thing, correct? Am I right or wrong?
No, you're not. You're not correct
I'm
in
trying to
saying
learn
that.
here, guys. I know TikTok is taken off, so maybe
You
Twitch
see,
is the same thing.
TikTok is more of a quick consumer-based, like instant media platform where people just post short videos to interact. Where Twitch is a live streaming platform.
Okay.
So there's a lot more viewer interaction. There's a lot more community building involved. It's a whole spiral on a different kind of content, you know. You join into a live stream, and what you're bombarded with is the personality of the streamer and the community. You know, there's a lot when you enter a Twitch channel.
Great. Okay, I think I would like to explore that a bit later. And we've got Bronson, and I've known this guy to be in the sponsorship space in terms of traditional sport, and now he's busy talking about gaming, gamification, and eSport. And what's happening with that, Bronson? Introduce yourself, sir.
How's it, Bronson Mukabela? As you said, started with Mr. Chinks here back in the days, in I won't tell our age, the Unilever days. So Worked on the traditional marketing side, moved on to sponsorships at a number of at a few sort of blue chip companies. And in my past life, I was also working on the commercial side on traditional sponsorships, working with the likes of SA Rugby, the Lions, a few other teams across a number of sports. And in recent time, basically went into exploring this world of digital, around where the opportunities could be going forward. And hence the launch of an entity called DigiGage Sports and Entertainment, which in essence has been put in place to help rights holders speak the language of marketing or business ultimately, and bringing those two worlds together. And I guess the conversation now, not that to say traditional sports is no longer relevant, but I think the pertinent the conversation at the moment is around sort of digital gaming and to an extent the youth market. And I think that's why it's of interest for me.
Sure. So I mean, I want to start with Julia because I'm interested with that fridge behind, and I hope when lockdown is done, I can come and have some Red Bull as well. But
Absolutely.
What caught my eye and grabbed my attention, I think it was either last year or 2 years ago when Louis Vuitton decided to, because I know Louis Vuitton does sponsor the casing for the Soccer World Cup, right? And then they decided to sponsor either the trophy or the casing for esport. Could you just get into a bit in terms of what esport is, like a beginner's guide 101, and
Sure.
how it's grown over the years, you know?
Absolutely. So esports is more, I think, easily understood as competitive gaming. So there are multiple different games that are considered an esport, and that can be FIFA, that can be sim racing, or that could be games that are more, I would say, I say shooters, I guess, which is obviously like your Call of Duties and Counter Strikes. And then obviously a very well-known one would be Fortnite. And, you know, the list goes on really. There's some strategy games as well that's also extremely well-known, like League of Legends and Dota 2. And it really is based on the amount of players, competitive players that are in the game, and also measured by the amount of spectators. So traditionally, I think a lot of people would know esports more from the, you know, crazy spectator phenomenon, like filling stadiums and these crazy viewership numbers, you know, outperforming the NFL and so on and so forth. I think those statistics have been, you know, made very public and, you know, spoken a lot quite frequently. So I think esports is currently in a stage where it is basically a virtual sport. You know, esports players are considered athletes, and they're not the stereotype gamers that, you know, are unhealthy or unfit, but in fact have to spend a lot of time upskilling themselves and working on their game to get to that high level. So it is definitely time consuming, very mental based, but also it will test your health and your fitness in the sense that you have to stay sharp and you have to stay cognizant of what you're doing. So esports is very, very much evolving into a state now where you have to be of a certain you know, health, fitness, mental state, and or passion, I would say, to actually excel and get to the top ranks of it.
Sure. So I mean, I mean, you're relatively young. I would have assumed you were playing with dolls when, and it's a very typical view of my world. Because for me, when it's esports, I picture a dark room, a couple of guys in glasses out in South Korea somewhere because they had huge influence. How did a young lady like yourself get into it?
So I would say the first thing that really caught my attention was my younger brother. He's 4 years younger than me. At the time, he was fascinated with computers and technology from a very, very young age. And at the time, you know, he sort of delved into that where you can find content about gaming and find the communities online, find the servers online, and he'd start speaking to people online. My parents didn't necessarily know how to regulate that. So considering he was a very smart kid, he took it upon himself to, you know, find out more information. Where do these gamers connect? Where do they go to? And we started going to LAN events. And back in the day, I say this as if it was long ago, but Organized Chaos was one of the biggest LAN events in Cape Town. We often had about 300 to 1,500 gamers that came with their computers and stayed in the Belleville Velodrome for the weekend. And that is basically what really ignited my passion for esports, seeing all these gamers come and compete for prize money every month, and having the ranks in the leagues, and being able to join an online competitive server and be able to use your voice, and to use your skill to, get into these leagues and ranks, and make yourself get to pro level.
So Tendo, I mean, talking about where gamers connect, every Saturday I wake up to a noise of some guy talking over YouTube in my house, and it's a game called Minecraft, and it's the yap yap yap, and I asked to say what's going on, and my kids are laughing, and this guy is joking, and then they move on to the next one, and there's this YouTuber. What's this streaming thing? I mean, we can all. I mean, for me, streaming is was watching The Last Dance on Netflix. That's streaming for me. But what's this streaming thing when it comes to gamers connecting?
Well, firstly, let me just apologize. I believe my mic was acting up. I could see everybody in the chat was going crazy. There's a joke that happens on my Twitch channel because my mic has been acting up lately, and they all just call it chocolate rain because it goes super deep and etc. etc. I apologize for that. But live streaming is very self-explanatory. You'll turn on the camera, you press the go live button, and you broadcast yourself to an audience, a very uncapped audience. One of again the biggest platforms to stream gaming right now is Twitch. And the great thing about Twitch is that, like I said, it's uncapped, and you can reach anyone from anywhere that is on Twitch. My community isn't only currently built around South Africans, it's built around many other countries as well. And you can see the reach that you can create. But the whole consensus about Twitch streaming is that when you come into a Twitch channel as a viewer, you are greeted by the streamer and what content they provide. You are given the opportunity to interact with them in the live chat, and you're also given the opportunity. Some people do it over time. Some people find the connection and they click real quick and they'll extend their support onto you. We were discussing behind the scenes about the subscriptions, the bit donations, etc., etc. So live streaming in the gaming world right now is about community building, and you talked about it as well. How there's all this talk about community, and that's the main concept of trying to build a community that one supports the streamer, and the community should also, in a sense, support itself, and you should feel welcome in it.
Yeah. So I mean, there's some insignificant guy who plays Fortnite called Ninja. He's some cat out of the US. He's quite big, obviously, on Fortnite, and I had to put Fortnite for a pause in my house because it was consuming the boys' time. But how has Fortnite elevated streaming and gaming in a sense? Because I saw they had, is it a concert or in-game concert with Travis Scott? And clearly Fortnite has taken on. I mean, there was a point where League of Legends was said it's going to take over Fortnite, but it seems like Fortnite keeps growing further and further. What happened there? I want you to describe more the relationship with what Ninja did for the game and what the game did for streaming and esports.
So what I believe Fortnite brought to gaming and just the gaming industry, it brought through a new wave and a new kind of energy. Because before, the games that we were playing weren't as, I want to use the word colorful and
and
Interactive.
iCAD and proactive, interactive. And what the company that made Fortnite, Epic Games, has done is just create a game that keeps the players coming back, you know. And what Ninja did was just like hop on the game, support the game. And what really made Fortnite where Fortnite is now, I believe, is the creators of the game, the Twitch streamers. And that's what really also perpetuated Twitch and blew it up a lot. This was like back in 2017.
Oh.
Twitch was big at the time, but it wasn't as big as when Fortnite came through and when Ninja started streaming. Then you started having more celebrities start discovering. I mean, Ninja had Drake, and we discussed a little bit about how you gauge how successful a Twitch channel is based on its average viewers. Having something like a 20 average viewers would be considered having a small channel, and you'd probably be seen as doing well. Well, when Drake was playing with Ninja, they had something close to like 600,000 people watching at the same time.
Wow,
and you can imagine how many football stadiums, how many arenas it takes to fill 600,000 seats. You know what I mean? So
that's almost like a semi-final of probably a quarter-final of a rugby tournament. You know, big globally. Cool.
Yeah.
So I think what most people on the call want to know is, how do brands get involved? So Bronson, I mean, you and me are on the mature side. I mean, how did we move from cartridges,
I'm still young,
Super Mario and Luigi, chasing to go through those tunnels, to FIFA being linked with Adidas and having in-gaming advertising? I mean, what happened between that area of ours to where we are now, and what does the future look like?
I think what Tendo and Julia have highlighted is there's a whole big ecosystem that exists around gaming. And I think, like with any sport, generally the focus becomes on the people that are playing, as opposed to understanding what the ecosystem looks like. And ultimately, not every game becomes successful. So I know I'll answer your question now, but if people have access to Netflix, there's a kind of, call it a documentary called League of Legends Origins, that kind of explains how that game grew. You know, and I think it gives people perspective of, to a certain extent, it's a game of chance. Not every single game will take off. And in taking off, I guess, becomes how then do you keep that community engaged going forward? So you highlighted Fortnite, for example. So I've got an 11-year-old son here, so there was madness in the house.
Bronson, sorry, just mind the mic. Your hands are behind, and it's causing a bit of an issue. Thanks, Chief.
No problem. Sorry, man. Yeah. So just as similar to you, I've got an 11-year-old son in the house here, so I guess he's my eyes and ears to what's happening in this world. If he's not playing Fortnite, he's playing Clash Royale. You know, he's moved from Minecraft, so in his mind, he's no longer young enough to play Minecraft. But I think, in essence, in terms of your question around where brands can get involved, is the opportunity. One is understanding what this ecosystem looks like. And generally, when people in this space speak about brands, they speak about endemic brands, sort of non-endemic brands. So the endemic brands become sort of your day-to-day brands that are related to the gaming industry. So your headphones, your PC, your console, your controller that you mentioned. So those type of brands, you know, whether the ASUS, HPs of this world, it's natural for people to expect them to be in the space. And the non-endemic brands, I think that's where the big opportunity also exists, you know. So you look at the likes of DHL, globally, MasterCard, Visa, and locally, you know, Telkom, I know, spent a lot of money investing into their own program around VS Gaming. Telkom, I guess one can ask, are they sort of gaming developer? Are they a sponsor, or are they organizers? Because they've launched VS Gaming, where people can play in organized leagues, similar to a company like Metal State, who play and sort of organize these online leagues. So if you have an opportunity, just log on and get to see what goes on in that world, because there they offer a whole number of games. And there can be once-off competitions, there can be sort of ongoing leagues that people participate in. And brands, I guess, can kind of follow the traditional route and can sort of plug their logos and sort of have presence in those spaces. However, I think the biggest opportunity, and I think my other colleagues on this call can attest to it, the opportunity sits in the content, whether it be created by the brands themselves, interacting with the people that are part of the game. You mentioned Ninja, who on its own is a personality. However, he is not the best player, just from listening to Masanya. There was a competition last year. A young 16-year-old boy won $3 million. And that was like the big story, bigger than what Tiger Woods won for winning the Masters, or the guy that won the Tour de France. So, so there's that aspect of competition and sort of the reward to being a participant. But I think for brands, in my mind, is around presence, and how do you use that presence to build engaging content and engaging opportunities, because out of that also comes analytics of knowing who watches, who participates. And because everyone's speaking of data, so the big stories around big data for brands, so now it's how do you use that data to go and craft insights, to go then and craft opportunities. And it's not just about the logo. And I think that's where the danger becomes. And not that it's the case in traditional sports, but generally that's what tends to happen. All the money goes into rights fees, and nobody puts money behind sort of activation, sort of leverage. And I think that's where the opportunity sits in the sort of the leverage side for brands. And it's a journey, but I think that's where the opportunity sits in terms of how then do brands authentically get involved.
Okay. So talking about personalities, Julia, I mean, you myself, I would consider you an influencer in this space. So I am a brand sitting in Sandton with my agency, and we want to get into esports, and we want an influencer. And how do we get value? And most of the brand people that are sitting are people in their mid-life, like myself. How do we get involved? How do we get you? And I mean, if what do you give us back if we pay you X amount of money? I mean, I guess for Red Bull, the fridge, and I'm back to the fridge again. For them, at least we can see it. But what about what else? How else can brands get involved with a personality like yourself?
So I think it really is a little bit more dependent on what does the brand want to achieve. When it comes to sales or exposure, or both, it really just depends on strategizing. So obviously, as an influencer, you can consider me same as a fashion influencer or a vlogger on YouTube. The same concept applies. So I do understand that it is still a newer concept, but often what happens is a brand sees gaming and all of a sudden they get a little bit more hesitant just because they maybe don't understand the space. So if a brand does approach me, I do take my time into educating on the space, and I take my time educating on my platforms that I created and how I create on those platforms. Obviously, a lot of my bigger content is live on Twitch. And I do have a structured plan with that. And there is a certain way that I would like to have a brand be exposed on my Twitch channel for them to actually feel like they're gaining value out of it. But yes, it is very much a collaborative, space to be in. I've worked with quite a few non-endemic brands. In the past, I think one of them that might be more relevant would be Castle Light, for example. And they sponsored me as an influencer and not as a gaming ambassador, which worked really well because I was in a pool full of musicians, Instagram models, vloggers, TikTokers. There was a whole bunch of people in it. And from my side, basically, the brand would say, look, this is our product. This is the type of engagement that we'd like to achieve. And it's up to you how you create the content to interact with your gaming audience as best possible. So there were ways for us to do that, and a lot of it was based on activations at the time. Obviously, now it being an online thing, you have to obviously consider age restrictions and so on and so forth. So therefore, Twitch is actually really well equipped for stuff like that, where you don't have to necessarily worry as much as YouTube about, demonetization and so on. You can actually have a beer on camera, but you have to set your age limit for your stream to a certain amount. And obviously then you can play games that of a certain age limit as well. So I think that's really cool because some games are obviously a little bit more gory and visual, and therefore you can set your age limit. So it really just does depend on the brand, the product. I have also been approached by, for example, investment companies that have investment apps for younger people that they would like to just expose their sort of app to and explain how it works. And if it's something that I think is relevant to my community and something that I think is actually of value to my community, I would then look at the app and see how I can create engaging content that
Yes.
my community would be interested in and actually would benefit them. So yeah,
Sure.
I think it is also one thing I'd like to highlight for brands, if there is someone listening that would be keen to, invest into gaming or esports, is really just see, how you can assist with growing the esports community and not necessarily how you can leverage of the esports community. Currently in South Africa, we aren't at the global stage, we aren't at international numbers, and our influencers are working extremely hard to even get to the point of breakthrough virability, celebrity status. So I think it is very valuable for brands to hop into the industry now and sort of build on a sort of brand love story and a grassroots development story, rather than just saying, here's our product, we want X amount of sales. Rather invest in the community, invest in the influencers, and let's
Yeah.
grow together.
Perfect. So, I mean, talking about communities and tribes, Tando, we obviously on the core, we're very much sounding suburbish, what's happening in communities in the township in terms of esport and gaming? Do you guys know about it? And how do we get to get young people or older people in those communities involved in this and bring about awareness? Obviously, taking into consideration data costs and all that. But for me, I'm always a true believer that we should not be involved in things that grow the inequality gap between the haves and have-nots. Things need to be accessible to everybody. So my question again is, how are the communities growing in the peri-urban and township areas?
I know of a few what we call them as esport organizations.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's the same concept of like joining a sporting team where you represent, let's say, Kaizer Chiefs. There's a couple of esports organizations in the townships that I've heard of. I can't really recall the names, but I've seen them doing a little bit of work trying to help more people enter this kind of industry. And we have this overlining African problem of the traditional roots of
Yeah.
becoming successful, going to varsity, getting a university degree, working your 9 to 5, and then over time you'll get to a certain point. I think if there's more brands working with like influencers and trying to get esports and gaming to more rural areas, because when you look at South Africa, especially, and Africa in general, majority of the population will be found in those kind of areas.
Yeah.
Gaming is a very niche thing that I would say
Sure.
not many people know about it, and the people that do know about it know the very basic stuff, which is like the township right now. Most of them, you probably go to them, they probably won't even know what your Call of Duty is. They'll know what like Super Mario is, because those are things that like their parents had back in the day, and they're imparting on them. So if you get more facilities as well, what's nice around my area, in Rivonia, we have this place called the Maverick Center.
Yeah.
And what it is an arena where you can either bring your computers and play in like an arena type setting to kind of simulate the esports environment, because that's just something that's associated with esporting. Is like, it's not only sitting in front of the computer. Eventually you get to a point, once you make it, you go to like bigger leagues and bigger like major events where everybody's congregated and watching. If we can get more opportunities, especially in schools, where an extracurricular activity for like gaming is introduced, and there's more facilities for people to start venturing onto like playing games and not playing sport, because there's so many children, I feel, get overshadowed by their parents. You know, when you love something, your parents might not love that thing that you love, and that stops you. And you find there's probably a lot of children in the townships that are slowly finding out about, like, you know, Twitch and gaming and esport, and they just want to find out more, but you know, they're not given that opportunity, especially with the infrastructure. Wi-Fi is a big problem, and Wi-Fi is like the biggest limitation we have right now in like South Africa and in Africa, you know. Unfortunately, with like watching live streams, you need to have like a good internet connection, right? So it does cause a bit of a problem.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry, can I just add? Sorry.
I just wanted to get...
Chinks, sorry, man. Just to add on to what Tendo was saying. So in terms of your question as well, there's an organization called ESports. The guys there, Gabriel and Mr. Perfect, as I call him, they've done quite a bit of work, and so I know they've been running an annual Tech Fest in Soweto. So unfortunately, because of COVID, had to be postponed. It was meant to happen now in June. And so on my side, I've been working with them just to look at how do we change the message around it, you know. So in light of your question now is to go, in the past it kind of spoke to gamers. I think there was a big opportunity to go and spread the word around the whole industry of gaming, across animation, across development, across. So basically the brands that you get involved should sort of allow people to see that there's a bigger industry behind gaming, not necessarily just playing. So that's just to answer your question around sort of what sort of work happening in the townships. Yeah, I'm sure there are others, but I just wanted to mention them. Yeah.
Sorry, Julia, you had a comment, but I've got 6 minutes left, and I just want to touch on to gamification. I think we've spent quite a significant amount of time on gaming and esport. So Bronson, I mean, when you being in the sponsorship space, we know that consumption of sport is going to change for the very near future. We're not going to have packed stadiums at FNB. We might not even have people going to stadiums. How can gamification be used for sports fans to feel involved in the game again? You know, how can we do that? And maybe you can explain just in short, what's the difference between gaming and gamification, and then get into answering my question.
So I think we've spoken a lot about gaming in our conversation now, which is basically the playing of the games, of which esports is a subset of that. And so from a gamification perspective is basically putting in sort of I'd say a gamified type of approach to the game, which means, you know, there's attachment of points, sort of badges, leagues. One could argue that Discovery's Vitality is gamification of exercise. You know, most of us wake up in the morning, run to get that smoothie at the end of the week once you've hit your points. So in sports, you know, you've got a big one around Fantasy Premier League, which is what a lot of people tend to play, which to a certain extent is linked to what's happening in real life. So I put together my team, depending on how my team participates, or the players in my team participate on the weekend. I earn or lose points based on that. And then there's rankings that come to that. And through that, then there's a sort of rewards at the end of the day that linked to your participation. So gamification is, in essence, I guess, ultimately is a way of engaging the fans and involving the fans in whatever competition is taking place. So it will always have a place in whatever way. And I think the opportunity is how brands can also potentially look at that as an avenue to get involved in gaming. Because there's a whole lot of formats that you can do, which is fantasy, you can do trivia, you can do predictor. And so it's not just limited to, as I said, the people that are playing. So engagement is, to me, the bigger story to be spoken about, and content that the guys have spoken about is part of that engagement. And gamification also sits into that space.
Yeah, and then to, any of you guys could answer this. Can you mention like brands that have successfully, besides the fridge in the back? I'm on that fridge. I think I had a long night. I need a Red Bull. if we could gamify the conversation and have the Red Bull. Besides Red Bull, what other mainstream brands have successfully got into sponsoring gaming?
I would say there's quite a few. Adidas obviously being one of them. I actually am affiliated with them, which is fantastic. I'm very happy to have such a cool, a commercial brand, as I like to call it, non-gaming brand, be partnered with me. I think it's such a amazing creative outlet and a way to express yourself. I think a lot of the time people forget that gamers are just people. I mean, we aren't special to, I mean, all of us are gamers in a sense. If you've ever played a phone game, a Facebook game, a console game or a PC game, it doesn't really matter. You are in a sense a gamer. So I think that term is very easily misused. So I think from a brand perspective, who else I can really highlight from my side would be USN. I've had some sort of fitness brands come in and speak to me a lot. Fitbit would be a brand that's also quite interested, for example. And then you'd also get some brands that are more in sort of the healthcare beauty side that's also seeing an opportunity, and also from like a clothing retail perspective. And then you'd see some brands that are, more service offerings. You've mentioned Discovery Vitality. I think there's a space for them as well to reach out to gamers in a specific target audience. So I think that's also really cool. But yeah, I think there's quite a few brands that are actively looking into what they can do. Obviously the more I would say obvious would be brands that are already affiliated with traditional sports, specifically motorsports or FIFA soccer. Those brands usually filter through some way or another. But yeah, I would say also fast food restaurants do fantastically in video gaming. I've actually really recently been sponsored by Debonair's, so they also did really cool stuff. We had some cool gaming nights, and it's a lot of fun to be able to have a pizza delivered to you and share the experience with your community and give away some vouchers and so on and so forth.
Okay, and Ten, I mean, as we wrap up, so the two of you are sitting on these chairs that in our generation used to be in city golfs, and the red seat belt. Why are you guys taking chairs out of cars? What's up?
I don't know. It's just I think it's the design. It's just racing
chairs. It looks cool.
It looks cool. They're very comfortable. They help with your aim just a little bit, when you play games. Yeah, just a little bit. And yeah, it's like it's one of those things that you'd consider part of like the gaming brand, lots of people will always think gaming, and then you'll be like, oh, there's a gaming chair, it's one of those things.
Cool. Yeah. And Bronson, how has Comic-Con changed the perception of esports and gaming in South Africa?
I'm not sure if I can say it's changed the perception. I think there's different ways that the industry comes to life, if I can call it that. So you've got the likes of Rage, Rush, Edge in Cape Town, Comic-Con, and I think maybe Comic-Con is different to what Comic-Con is known for in other markets in South Africa, because the sad part, which is linked to what Julia's highlighted, I think is the only way most of these events comes to life is at these exhibitions, expos. That's where the finals are held by the likes of VS Gaming, for example, for that game. So we don't have a lot of standalone gaming esport events that you see, as you say, in the US, in the big arenas. So gaming is kind of, to a certain extent, piggybacked, I guess, on Comic-Con locally, where ultimately Comic-Con, you get a lot of different people attending. Some go there for the sort of the dress up. Some go there with their kids for different activities. So so it's tough to answer your question in the way you asked it, but I think in essence is it's I guess it's just the way of bringing the games to life. So for me, just in closing, is there's different touch points for brands in which they can come through. So what may work for one brand may not work for another. So KFC came to life significantly at Comic-Con, you know, and they had a stand, an exhibition, they had sort of activities as well. So I think from brands in looking at these opportunities here is just, as Julia mentioned, is what is it that you want to achieve? In understanding that upfront, it becomes potentially an easier conversation to filter what may and what may not work. At the same time, you can also find new opportunities that you may not have thought of. You know, you speak of Fortnite, the amount of V-Bucks I've had to buy in this house. You know, if a bank could just help me with, sometimes I need to get a loan just for those V-Bucks, you know. So that could also be a conversation on that front. You know, I could gamify those rewards and can redeem them from digital onto the physical in some way. You know, can I convert it to real cash? Yeah, so I can go on forever, man.
Yeah. Okay. So there are brand people who still don't understand how this space works because it's quite new. So I want to open a challenge, right? So Gen Next is on the 20, I think it's the 21st of August. And I want to challenge Julia and Tyndall. I want you guys to play a live game for us, for Gen Next, right? So whoever calls it first calls the game. So what game do you guys want to play against each other?
Apex.
Apex.
Okay.
Why are you excluding me, man? Who said I can't play?
Well, let the young Gen Next is a young generation thing. So I think what we'll do is for part of Gen Next we incorporate a live stream so that I want brand people to sort of see that these are the opportunities for me. You know, so we'll either have a live stream the day before or the day after, but we'll definitely be in touch from a Gen Next perspective. Guys, really, really appreciate it. I've learned a lot. Again, before I get off, I would like to acknowledge my 14-year-old son, Rishongile, for helping me with the research. I've learned a lot, and now I can speak gaming and esports to him, and I think we'll have a good conversation. So cheers, guys, and have a good day, and enjoy, I guess, today's pizza and Red Bull and or other stuff that you guys do, right? And Bronson, keep buying those B-Bucks. Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Cheers, man. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.